Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Searching for solutions to the housing crisis in the South Bay. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Chula Vista city leaders are considering purchasing a motel to house unsheltered residents. The city council is taking up the issue tomorrow. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has more.
The Palomar Motel on Walnut Avenue in Chula Vista could become permanent supportive housing. City officials say there's 31 units here, and if the council approves the purchase, they would look to use federal and state dollars. Staff is estimating the cost could be up to $14 million, and that would be to buy and improve the property. City of Chula Vista officials say the owners of the Palomar Motel reached out to them to potentially convert this property. Now, the city recently opened up an emergency homeless shelter, but officials say they need a more long-term solution to help people get rehoused. A Chula Vista City Council staff report says, while the opening of the city's emergency bridge shelter is an important step in moving unsheltered persons towards self-sufficiency, it does not provide a long-term solution for those that are ready for permanent housing and in need of a greater level of ongoing services and support. The residents would have the opportunity to connect with services including healthcare, treatment, and employment services. We talked with one man who says he lives nearby and does maintenance at the property. He says there's times when the motel doesn't look very busy.
So if we can help it, why not? Maybe. That way it's going to be good for the community.
The motel's conversion would be in two parts. The first phase involves renovating rooms to have full bathrooms and kitchenettes. Phase 2 would see land currently being used by a towing company turned into a safe parking lot that would be designed for homeless residents living in their vehicles. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Disruption on a downtown street today as dozens of activists protest against climate change in front of Sempra Energy headquarters. As KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen shows us, not everyone was a fan of this type of protest.
Dozens of protesters gather in front of the Sempra Energy building in downtown San Diego, armed with chalk to raise the alarm and leave a message for the utility company. Sempra is the parent company of SDG&E and SoCal Gas. They want Sempra to divest from fossil fuels and for President Biden to declare a climate emergency.
This should not be controversial in any way, shape, or form.
Scott Kelly is the director of Raise the Alarm and a biology professor at San Diego State. He says declaring a climate emergency is stating the obvious.
We had Phoenix having record temperature, 11 days in a row of 111 degrees. No one's ever seen this before. We had 7 days of heat that exceeded the records that were set 125,000 years ago. We have hot tub-like temperatures in Florida that are killing the coral reefs.
He says instead of declaring a climate emergency, Biden is expanding oil and gas drilling because of lobbying by companies like Sempra Energy.
They need to stop listening to these guys and start the immediate energy transition to green energy and to renewable energy.
These protesters say climate change is disrupting human lives, so they need to be disruptive today. Not everyone is a fan of the disruption. Richard Keeley lives in the building across from Sempra headquarters. He's tired of protesters showing up every few months.
Yeah, I think that's pretty rude.
But disruption is the point.
This emergency needs to be taken seriously.
Sempra says it has a deep respect for environmental stewardship and is investing billions in cleaner energy.
We need clean air, not another billionaire.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
A valuable swath of land in San Diego County's Proctor Valley could get long-term protection. As KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson explains, it's thanks in part to a legal settlement over the border wall project.
A parcel of land between the federally protected San Diego National Wildlife Refuge and the state-protected Rancho Hamul Ecological Reserve is on a path to getting permanent protections. The land sits in the Proctor Valley near Chula Vista.
That private property that was planned for just another awful sprawl development east of Chula Vista, if that land is protected, it protects the absolute core of that natural landscape.
18 states and 2 environmental organizations agreed to settle their challenge over how the wall construction was funded. That agreement included several concessions to account for the ecological damage caused by the wall, including $25 million to help buy the Otay Village Ranch 14 property. That's a major step toward the property's roughly $60 million purchase price.
In anything of this nature, you're never going to get all the money from one source. You have to go to different sources. So we look to different state sources, federal sources, even private parties, individuals who might want to donate.
The Nature Conservancy is leading the talks to buy the property. They say the money is encouraging, but the group isn't interested in discussing the deal until it's finalized. That could happen next year. Plans to build a housing development on the property were snuffed out by the courts over concerns about wildfires.
About 95% of California's wildfires are started by humans. And so when you locate new people and new development to undeveloped areas that are prone to wildfire, you create new risks. And that's what was going on here.
The land is considered critical habitat for golden eagles, the rare Kino checker spot butterfly, and vernal pools, which are home to several endangered species. If the purchase goes through, the land would likely become part of either the federal or state reserve. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
An almost 2-year effort to help displaced Afghans gain residency in the United States has new life in Washington, D.C. KPBS military and veterans reporter Andrew Dyer has the story.
Tens of thousands of Afghans who helped the U.S. and its allies during the 20-year war in Afghanistan currently languish in bureaucratic immigration limbo, legally living in the U.S. but without green cards and no clear path to obtain them. A bill that would provide such a path, the Afghan Adjustment Act, was reintroduced in the House and Senate this month. A bipartisan group of senators led by Minnesota Democrat Amy Klobuchar and South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham are trying to tie the bill to next year's annual defense bill, the National Defense Authorization Act.
It's about our national security. It's about a covenant that we have made and we must keep to those who stand with us on the battlefield.
In a speech on the Senate floor Thursday, Klobuchar compared the Afghans to the Vietnamese Hmong that came to the U.S. after the Vietnam War.
They cannot go back. They would be killed. We were right to help these people flee the Taliban and come to the United States, and it now falls on us to help provide them with the stability and the security they need to rebuild their lives here.
San Diego Congressman Scott Peters is a co-sponsor of the House version of the Afghan Adjustment Act. It was not amended to the House version of the defense bill, however. Supporters of the law are optimistic, but there is a long path ahead. The final Senate defense bill will need to be reconciled with a House version that includes several Republican amendments that would eliminate Pentagon diversity programs, transgender health care for service members, and travel reimbursement for those that have to travel for legal abortion health care. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, Israeli lawmakers pass a bill to weaken the country's justice system despite massive protests. Coming up at 7 right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Well, Comic-Con 2023 is a wrap. Without major studios and celebrities, smaller artists and creators had a chance to shine. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando attended the pop culture convention.
Exhibitors, preview night is now open. Welcome to Comic-Con International 2023.
Comic-Con kicked off last Wednesday with some attendees grateful for the lack of a Hollywood presence as a result of the dual writers and actors strike. With no big celebrities to pack Hall H, 6,500 people had to change their plans.
So the fact that all of those folks who had already gotten their tickets, who had already made their plans, are here, and there is no like big studios, no HBO, there's no Marvel. Now they're going to the smaller scale educational panels. So all this stuff that was not getting the eyeballs that it deserved is like suddenly getting it. And my hope is that in 2024, the people who are here today will remember the value of the discussions and the people and the exhibits that are not the massive multi-million-dollar blockbuster presentations.
Hollywood may have been absent from Hall H, but that left room for international pop culture to take center stage and get media buzz. Project K became the first Indian movie to be showcased at the pop culture convention.
Now we need to be right in the middle of where fandom is, and Comic-Con it is.
Meanwhile, vendors in Artist Alley saw an increase in traffic.
Hall H isn't really rumbling too much this year, so we have a lot of Artist Alley support, which we love. We sold out of some prints that's never happened before, so we had to get some new ones delivered overnight, and it's been a whirlwind. So we're having a great time out here.
Another person having a great time was Dylan Soper, an 11-year-old attending Comic-Con for the very first time.
And I'm just like insanely excited about Comic-Con. There's so much stuff. It was so exciting. Like the lights, the food, the people, the cosplays were amazing. And it's just like everything. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah. For many geeky fans, this year felt like a return to the con's roots. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Even the most unexpected parts of San Diego are flush with art. KPBS investigative reporter Scott Rod explores the city's surprisingly aesthetic wastewater treatment system.
San Diego is home to a world-class public art scene. Colorful murals stretching across entire building sides, soaring sculptures celebrating the city's heritage. But there's a whole world of public art that thrives along the bowels of America's finest city.
You have to look at something on toilet, and so it's nice to have something to look at.
The city of San Diego commissioned artist Shinpei Takeda to transform the ceiling of this public restroom in Ocean Beach. He lived in the neighborhood, so the project was personal.
The piece is titled, My Memory on Top of Your Memory.
It features quotes from famous authors whose names appear on nearby street signs, layered over excerpts from local news stories. Takeda says a public restroom is an excellent canvas for public expression.
If art is something that makes us think, something that makes us reflect, and I think it can be anywhere, and then where else better to do it when you're doing the most biological business.
Takeda's piece is our starting point as we explore the artwork sprinkling San Diego's sewage system. About a mile north is another piece funded by the city's Arts Commission on a public restroom. The work, titled Pixelated Summer, is a collage of photo tiles capturing the frenetic joy of nearby Belmont Park and the summer serenity of Mission Beach. Jacob Bishop was wrapping up a morning of metal detecting on the sand when he stopped to consider the artwork.
It gives a little bit of style, which is what we have here in San Diego. It just adds a little bit of peacefulness, I think.
He says it reminds him of bringing his daughters to the ocean when they were little.
I try to teach them surf, put the leash around their leg up high because it didn't fit, but they had their little wetsuits and it was a lot of fun.
When you flush at these beach bathrooms, the water flows first to a pump station near the San Diego airport. Pump stations help sewage reach treatment plants. Nearly half a dozen of them around the city feature public art, including a plaza filled with sandstone pillars and mosaics with native stones and handmade tiles. From the pump station, our effluent expedition continues to the Point Loma wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, we may be dealing with but
somebody else can look at this and find something beautiful in it.
Richard Turner is a prolific public artist. He produced several pieces on the outside of the Point Loma plant, including a series of abstract metal patterns. Some are a cascade of blue, green, and purple, representing the ocean. Others are a mix of rusty black and brown, representing the sewage treated inside. The installation also includes an interactive section of pipe, the exact kind of pipe the plant uses to safely discharge treated wastewater, about 150 million gallons a day, into the ocean.
I thought, okay, so here I've got an opportunity to actually bring visitors inside the technology or part of the plant itself.
Turner has artwork on 5 wastewater treatment facilities in California, including 2 in San Diego.
I like the quirkiness of it, but I also felt, more importantly, that here's an interesting challenge for me.
In addition to the Point Loma facility, Turner left his mark on the Metro Biosolid Center in Kearney Mesa, which is the next stop on our wastewater voyage. The center processes treated sludge from Point Loma. The artwork starts at the front gate, continues in the lobby, and spreads throughout the main administrative building.
People see it and they ask questions. When I tell them what it is, they find it very interesting.
Richard Pitchford is the superintendent at the Biosolid Center. He says the artwork forces visitors to ponder the complex process that happens after they use the bathroom.
You flush it, it's gone. I don't have to deal with it anymore. When we deal with it on the other end, and it's actually a fascinating industry.
The dung beetle is a recurring motif throughout the installation. The bug eats animal droppings and then recycles nutrients back into the ecosystem. It's a perfect metaphor for the Biosolid Center, which turns semi-processed sludge into fertilizer cakes used to grow non-edible crops. The artwork also explores a bit of San Diego's sanitation history, such as
when the city had the low-flow toilet initiative and they were replacing all the toilets, you can see the piles of toilets down there, and that kind of represents, well, that's where all this used to go or come from. And then they made artwork out of all those broken toilets.
Pitchford says one of his favorite pieces is a series of little floating, logs on one of the hallway walls. They start out a brownish clay color and then slowly turn to a shimmering gold.
I probably walked by it several times before I really figured out, oh, this is what it's representing. You can start out with something that's basically somebody's waste, and by the end of the process, it is worth something.
He even found symbolism in the blank spaces at the end of the wall.
We don't know what the future holds for our biosolids.
I never once considered those empty spaces having any meaning whatsoever. But the fact that he is bringing meaning to that piece, that is great. I love that.
In the end, I suppose that's what all this bathroom art is about, finding meaning and value where you least expect it. Some food for thought the next time you hit the head. Scott Rodd, KPBS News.
And you can learn more about public art in San Diego on our website. Just go to kpbs.org/public art to find art in your neighborhood and let us know which pieces you would like to see profiled. The first ever Miss California Extraordinaire has been crowned. 15-year-old Trinity Knight is a sophomore at Orange Glen High School in Escondido living with Williams syndrome. The health disorder causes an intellectual disability, heart disease, and life-threatening blood vessel problems. Trinity was one of 19 contestants who competed on Saturday night in the pageant designed to celebrate girls who are often marginalized for their differences. And her mother told KPBS News her daughter has spent much of her life undergoing surgeries.
Trinity has been through so many things and had such a hard life, and she doesn't get to participate in a lot of sports or other activities. So it's been absolutely amazing just to see her get up there and sing her little heart out and walk in her evening gown with all the confidence in the world.
Trinity sang the song That's What Friends Are For during the talent competition. Along with her crown, she also won an all-expense-paid trip to Florida for her family and for herself.
Well, let's start you off with your weather headlines. What do we have on tap throughout the rest of the week? Well, Monsoonal moisture is going to stick with us at least through Tuesday. We will start to dry out, though, as we head into the middle of the week. Inland areas, though, will warm or will continue to warm with another round of monsoon on the way. Well, we have those details coming up. Tonight, we're dropping down to a low of 69 with partly cloudy skies, but then by tomorrow, we are rising to the 90s and even the triple digits in areas like Ramona and Borrego Springs. And El Cajon coming in with a high of 96, Mount Laguna 78, so not too bad, but we'll still see that sunshine, and Acampo coming in with a high of 88. Now, we do have excessive heat warnings in effect that do go into effect Tuesday afternoon, and they're going to stay with us at least through Wednesday evening. We do have that included across the high deserts, even portions of the mountains. So again, be on the lookout for extreme heat. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, staying hydrated, drinking plenty of water. You don't want to be caught out in the heat unprepared. Take plenty of cooling breaks. All right, so we aren't really dealing with too much action. We're still tapping into that monsoonal flow, and so a few isolated showers or even thunder showers possible, especially across the mountains, but then, or the higher elevations. But then as we head throughout the rest of the week, we are drying out, but then that monsoonal pattern returns again towards the end of the weekend into early next week. So here's Tuesday, your outlook: humid. On Tuesday, 83 for the high along the coast, 84 by Wednesday. We're staying in the 80s throughout the week. It's still going to be a little toasty outside, and inland highs are going to remain in the 90s throughout the week. Mountains, well, you're looking at the 70s, mostly sunny skies, sunshine a little cooler, you know, on Friday, but overall not too shabby. And then for the deserts, well, triple digits all the way, even triple digit teens on tap Tuesday and Wednesday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
Well, Comic-Con is only a few days, but groups gather to play Dungeons & Dragons year-round. KPBS video journalist Roland Lizarrando shows us why the fantasy game means so much to people.
Dungeons & Dragons is a cooperative fantasy storytelling game.
A single arrow pew, launches from Discovery's bow, and it hits him in the face.
Where you have a dungeon master who's guiding you through the story, and players that are living out the story in their mind, so to speak.
Will, it is your turn. What do you would like to do?
I'm going to take out my longbow and shoot one of the creatures.
Okay. For the most part, the setting is a high fantasy version of the Middle Ages.
In the game, if you're a player, you're going to make a character.
A lot of the players identify with the characters a lot.
I just love that I can make it my own, and I know that I have kind of an unlimited effects budget, so there's nothing stopping me from taking any weird random idea I have and trying to find a way to put it in the game.
This is a life-size closet, which is a creature that people might have to fight.
One of the things that's always on the table for the most part is character death. You are adventuring, you are going up against beasts, so characters can and will die.
So this is Tiamat. It's the embodiment of all the evil dragons.
It's incredibly social, right? I think that's a huge piece of it. When you tell stories like that, as a GM or a dungeon master, I don't know what's going to happen, right? I basically set a premise, and then we all tell the story together.
Take a shot.
The dice help determine the outcomes of combat or the stories or whatever, but the action is in your mind.
Are spells on the table for this challenge?
I would believe that this is a no-spell challenge.
Okay.
Some game masters like to run a very scripted game. Some people like to be much more improvisational.
You pull, you loose your arrow, and they go boom, boom, boom. Hits a number of them as they all sink back into the water.
There really is no restrictions other than what your imagination is.
A creature of elemental being that came from the depths of the ocean to follow you guys under the orders of Kulik.
They've done a real big focus on what the imagination of it and making it very accessible. The rule set has gone through variations, and the current one is the easiest to learn.
You get people from all walks of life that play Dungeons & Dragons, and most of the time, they just want to find somewhere to fit in. You can also use it as a tool to help yourself dealing with crowds or, let's say, any kind of social anxieties that you might have.
How you see the world around you ends up getting reflected here.
I really love being in person playing D&D and being able to see people face to face.
No matter how bad my day was, once we start to play and once you start to interact with that character and the group around you, it almost always lifts you up.
Oh wow, that's nice actually.
Whenever I make like my D&D characters, I always like put a little bit of myself and like my own like life and issues and stuff in the backstory.
And I think D&D in recent years really embraced that, because there was the stereotype, you know, it's a bunch of fat, nerdy white guys in a basement, you know, antisocial or whatever.
Because really it's a game about heroes, right? And so it gives us an opportunity to kind of play out what would it be if I am that hero that we all read about. And, you know, we all kind of have that slice in us, I think.
So, and that's really enabled a lot of people to play, and then in the artwork and how they approach characters and classes, you know, people can see themselves in the characters and in the rule books.
We didn't see nothing.
They laugh, you know, or they cry, you know, or whatever range of emotions. You go through all the spectrums here.
We have kids playing Dungeons & Dragons. We have adults first time coming in and playing it. People in their 20s.
Jerry and Off the Shelf, really what they've done is they've managed to bring a very wide group of people, and they work hard to bring more people in.
The store is for people to come and hang out and play games.
It's a great culture, it's a great community. All the people here are very caring, very open.
I'm glad my family opened this game store because it let me have more of those connections. It really kind of opened up my world when that happened.
And that story was produced by video journalist Roland Lizarrando. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On NPR's Morning Edition, how artificial intelligence is at the forefront of the Biden administration's $185 million investment in wildfire preparation and response. And then on KPBS Midday Edition, it's interviewing the candidates in the special election for District 4 County Supervisor. And you can find all of tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.